information governance is really important. Many organisations implemented Teams by what I call the COVID method. So in early 2020, we kind of switched it on and hoped for the best. And now what we need to do is we now need to make sure we've got all of our governance and compliance features configured, all of our controls in place. And many organisations have done this. Some have got part way through, but we've got a really unique opportunity at the moment with the introduction of some big changes around Microsoft Teams, with new Teams, Teams Premium especially coming in, to revisit that whole piece and take advantage of those opportunities to make sure we're very clear with the business as to the behaviours we expect, and also to look at our configuration, because governance is not just about the tick boxes in the settings, it's also about how we encourage our users to work. Okay, so that's why we wanted to look at this webinar now. There's one other thing to consider. Microsoft are very heavily focused on introducing artificial intelligence tools into the business functionality that we have. You'll all have heard, probably, if you follow any of the news, you'll have heard of Copilot, Copilot for this, Copilot for that, Copilot for everything. That is all going to rely quite heavily on our existing governance features and controls. So if we haven't got all of those tick boxes ticked, we haven't got our permissions sorted in Teams and SharePoint, the AI features are going to highlight our frailties in that area a lot more. So that's why now is the right time to be looking at this. So in this webinar, I'm going to briefly talk about how you can keep up to date with the changes. We're going to talk about the new Teams and what it is and what it's offering us. We're going to talk about Teams Premium and what it is and the features that introduces. And then we're going to look at the governance, compliance and information protection improvements around those two tools. Now, before I dive in, I did want to get you a little bit involved. So if you don't mind, I've got a quick survey, 2 questions to kind of gauge your view on a couple of things in here. So about what areas are of most concern and which areas cause the most issue. You can use the QR code on your camera, on your phone to access that, or you can go to slido.com from any web browser on your computer, on your phone, tablet, whatever device you'd like to, and use the short code there to join. I'm just going to jump across and open that up. We'll still have the join instructions on the screen there, so you can see that there on screen. And it's interesting to see. We'll give this one a little bit of time to see what people think, and then I'll have a look at the other one. So a lot of people, the biggest concern at the moment is the information retention. Okay. Interesting that meeting security is quite low down there. That's one that comes up quite a lot when we're talking to.
So, sorry, am I allowed to talk? Ask a question?
Yes, certainly.
Are the participants responding to this? I've got nothing. I've got Slido on, but I didn't register or anything.
You don't need to register. It doesn't track any of your personal data at all. Right. So when you follow the link, right. So if you go to slido.com, let me just grab the address for you.
Thanks. I've been on Slido and I just registered. I didn't register. I just linked it on with Google and I just left the page there.
You don't
Right.
even need to do that. You've got an option in the middle of the screen that says joining as a participant. You simply put the code in there, 6312089, and click go, and you'll be able to answer.
6312089.
Yeah,
6312089.
that's correct.
I've just clicked it. Thanks.
So if I just have a look at the next one. Okay, so meeting notes and actions is the most popular as a user, things that cause you issues. Okay, I find these quite interesting because what I'm looking at here is which of these new products are going to address those concerns. So your meeting notes and actions is an AI feature. Okay. Teams performance on your device, that's coming from new teams. Tenant switching, new teams. Yeah. If I go back to the other one. Yeah, so information retention is the Microsoft Purview retention features, information lifecycle management there. Meeting security, interestingly enough, is what drove Microsoft to introduce Teams Premium, concerns around meeting security. So it's interesting that that's not very high up the list there. Feel free to keep submitting into those if you're joining us. I'll just put the survey code in the chat as well. So if people are joining us afterwards, they can pick that up. And we'll come back to that in a little bit towards the end and see what people are saying. Just checking I typed it incorrectly in the chat. There we go. So in terms of keeping up to date, there's lots of changes in Microsoft 365. And there's a couple of ways you can keep up to date with all of the changes. So from a team-specific perspective, there's a monthly blog that goes out on the Microsoft Teams blog, which is all about how the changes that they've talked about in the last month. Okay, and that's on the Microsoft Tech Community. So if you were looking for that, you can just search for Tech Community and Teams blog. Yep. The other one that you can use is the Microsoft 365 roadmap. So again, a very quick search for the Microsoft 365 roadmap will give you those that site, and then you can filter it on Teams quite easily. And then you can also get information from the, from the Microsoft support site. Got hiccups now. It's not good. And of course, the best way to keep up to date on all of this is to come to our quarterly catch-ups, where we'll take you through the features. The disadvantage of the catch-ups is that you have to listen to me explain the different features to you. And they're the features that I pick, so it might not be exactly the features you're most interested in. But there we go. I like that way. Having someone explain something to me is always more helpful than finding it myself. And we do have sign up link at the end. I'm sure Sharon will share that in for you as well. So first of all, looking at new teams. Some of you will have seen this toggle at the top of Teams here, this new Teams toggle. Some of you will have seen that starting to appear. Not all of you, because it's controlled by your administrator. And the new Teams is a completely re-engineered application. So it's still Microsoft Teams, but it's been rebuilt to be faster and lighter to support multiple accounts, and it has a slightly updated look and feel. Okay. And I've been using this new Teams for quite a while in preview before they released it to everybody else to test, probably about 6 months now. And it really is working well. However, I don't have everything in it yet. If you are an admin, there is guidance on the documentation on Microsoft Learn to enable this for your users. Okay. By default, it's set to Microsoft controlled when that toggle appears, but we can also make the toggle appear for our users if we want to. And to try it out, as soon as that toggle appears, you basically move it across and you get new teams. So once I've moved the toggle across, I've got the new teams. It's much whiter, it's much paler, but it is, as I say, faster. It's a much simpler interface, and it does support cross-tenant working much better. I'm in one tenant at the moment, but I'm actually getting notifications pop up on screen from the Microsoft tenant where I'm a guest user as well. So I'm getting a lot of different notifications from all of my tenants, and I could be tenant switching in the background and still be in this meeting. So I could switch to the Microsoft tenant and respond to those messages without leaving the call. There we go. And that is really stable. Initially, I will confess it was a little bit wobbly, but now it's really nice and stable. It's also built to support AI and lots of other features that we've been asking for a long time that weren't possible in the old structure. Okay. So some of the things that Microsoft are looking into are things like Planner in more types of channels. Okay, because we can only use Planner in standard channels at the moment. So there's more functionality that they can work on and release, and other things that I'm not allowed to say anything about, but are really good. Promise. So it's not just AI that is going to support, it's a lot of the older niggles that we've had with Microsoft Teams that we've been requesting for a while. But the big thing is the performance. So I've got a little video here just to show you that updated performance. Okay, so you've got new teams and classic teams. Now this is a Microsoft video, but I can promise you I'm getting the same results on my device. Okay, so they are, the new teams is significantly faster. I'm sure you'll agree. There you go. More than twice as fast. And we've got improved scrolling performance as well. Channel switching, much faster. Joining a meeting, you don't have to wait anywhere near as long for your meeting to actually pop up. The amount of memory usage, the usage on your machine is significantly lower, even if you're switching lots of tenants. Okay, I have 10 different logins to Microsoft Teams, and each of those logins is a guest in at least one other tenant. Okay, so that's a lot of organizations to work across. First of all, classic Teams couldn't support multiple accounts. Secondly, it definitely couldn't cope with tenant switching across that amount of organizations. This now can. As I say, new Teams doesn't necessarily have all of the features in at the moment. It will have all of the same features as classic Teams. Microsoft are looking to go to what they call feature parity before they roll it out as the default. And then you'll still be able to switch back to classic Teams for a while after new Teams becomes the default. Okay. At the moment, you can only use new Teams on Windows. It's not available on Mac. It's not available in web. And you can't add apps in new Teams at the moment to your side rail. I've got to go back to classic Teams to add it. And then when I move back to new Teams, I can usually see it, but I can't add it from classic. So I'm actually finding I'm in new Teams in the desktop app and classic in my web browser, just so I get the functionality of both at the moment. So still in preview. We won't come out of preview until we can work fully in new Teams and not have to switch back. And then eventually after that, classic Teams will be disabled. It will just be a seamless upgrade at some point if you don't end up with the toggle. Okay. And I'll come on to the improvements that new Teams offers us for information governance and compliance in a little bit. So let's next look at Teams Premium. I need to put my teeth in again, don't I? Shouldn't forget that before a webinar. So Teams Premium is an add-on. Okay, it's an additional license and it brings additional features, and these are classed as premium features because not everybody needs them. Okay, so not everyone in your organization will need a Teams Premium license. We have meeting customization, which gives a branded lobby in the background, branded meeting join experience, so that as you're coming into a meeting, you can see the color scheme of the organization. Also changes the colors within the meeting. So where you've got the box around the active speaker, we can set the color, the highlight color there as well. One organization I work with a lot has orange as their logo is orange. So they've made the highlight color in everything in orange. And it's quite weird because everything jumps out really nice and bright at you. And you're like, whoa, where did that come from? Meeting protection is a big area. And we're looking here at things like watermarks on screen when you're sharing sensitive content. So that if somebody does capture the watermark, capture a screenshot, you know, and that screenshot leaks, there is evidence within that screenshot as to who's captured it, because the watermark is the user watching the webinar. So if you were watching this webinar and I'd got a watermark on, you'd be seeing your email address overlaid on screen. So if you capture a screenshot, it's got your email address overlaid as a watermark on your screenshot. So if you then go and share that and share confidential information, the evidence is embedded into the image. We've also got controls over who can record, who can access the meeting chat, and the ability to lock down the settings for the meeting from those meeting protection features. And we can bake those into templates, so when people are creating new meetings, they choose a template and then don't have to trigger all of the settings themselves. So, you know, most of the time the meetings.
Oh, hey, I just got it on my browser.
So most of the times the meetings I'm doing. Was that a question, Ken, or is it just a unmute by accident?
I think it was an unmute. I've just muted him again, I believe, Ken. Yeah, unmute.
Okay. I'll carry on. If it's a question, I'm sure he'll come back. Okay, so the template, as I say, can be used to control the settings. So most of the meetings I do, they're open. Anyone can copy, can interact with the chat, etc. But some of them are dealing with sensitive information. So, for example, when I join a meeting with Microsoft and they're talking about their future plans for a product and asking for feedback, those meetings need to be protected. So they have settings when they create those meetings, they pick the template for a MVP consultation, and that puts the appropriate meeting options in place automatically. The AI features, when I wrote these slides yesterday, they were still in preview. As of today, the meeting recap AI features have gone live. Of course, they go live as I do the webinar, don't they? So if you have Teams Premium, the meeting recap feature is now available as well. And that will do things like put markers in your recording as to when you joined and left the meeting. It will capture tasks. It'll capture when you're mentioned in the meeting. And those sorts of things will come through as well. So you can see that additional information. And that is going to be the basis of the Teams Copilot as well. So the AI features are going to be really helpful from that perspective. Imagine joining a meeting partway through and saying, what have I missed? Well, that meeting recap feature will have the ability to tell you that. Webinar features are giving webinar organisers more control. So we'll have a green room before we join, so you won't have to sit there in the lobby waiting. You'll be able to join the meeting and have like a placeholder, but not hear the presenters until we're ready. We'll be able to control who you can see. So in this webinar, you can see each other if you've chosen to leave your camera on. The other attendees can see you.
Oh, you have to download the app. You have to download the app.
And we can hear somebody else as well. So can't see who it is. Presumably, as they're talking about downloading the app, they don't actually ask you a question.
That's okay. Just make sure you're on mute unless you're asking a question would be great. Yep, they're back on mute.
Perfect. Thank you. You know, controlling what people can see, locking, we can already lock down who can mute and unmute. We give you the ability to come off mute when you need to ask a question. It does cause some of these little issues, but most of the time it's fine. The other webinar features that we're going to get is more around controlling registration and reminding people that they've registered for a webinar built into Microsoft Teams, so no need to use third-party marketing products as well. Now, the virtual appointments came about during the horrors of 2020, where we couldn't have in-person appointments for anything, and we needed to still consult with people, and that's where virtual appointments come in. We can have a Teams meeting with people who are not Teams users. So a virtual appointment is, if you imagine you don't use Teams, your doctors do, and you need to talk to them, they can send you a link that you can just join through any web browser. And those are the virtual appointment features. And there's a lot of controls for those in Teams Premium. I said not everyone needs the license, and I'll just point out it's the person organising the meeting who needs the license, and that unlocks the features in the meeting. So if I had Teams Premium and I'd created this meeting, I would have the ability to have switched on the watermarks. You would have the ability to translate live captions if you've switched those on. Okay, because the meeting organizer has the premium license. So most of these features, as I say, are unlocked by the meeting organizer, the user who generates the meeting having the Teams Premium license. There is just to showcase what features it unlocks, there is a difference in the meeting options by having Teams Premium. And I'll zoom in on this for you. Okay, so if we start at the top here, you can see that we've got the ability to set a sensitivity label on a meeting and also to control what users can see on screen. So we control which cameras you see. Okay, I've got to unzoom and rezoom on a different space just to bring in the other features. There we go. And then the other section is this bit at the bottom, which is enabling a green room where Sharon and I could be talking. You're not sat in the lobby, you're in the meeting, but you can't hear us. But you can see any shared content we've already put on screen. Okay. We can control who can record, add those watermarks that we were talking about. The meeting theme is that customized color scheme that I mentioned. And for smaller meetings, we can also enable end-to-end encryption. So we can ensure that only invited people can access the meeting. Currently, the majority of those features are not fully supported in new Teams. So you can't test all of it together. You've got to switch backwards and forwards between them. But Teams Premium is fully supported in the classic Teams. So if you're not using a preview build, you've got all of the features of Teams Premium. So what does this mean for information protection, governance, and compliance? And just before I go into that, there's a question in the chat. Does an E5 license cover the premium experience, or is it still an add-on? It's still an add-on because it's not everybody. Yet the watermark will not prevent screens from being photographed, but even your photograph will still have the watermark in because it's overlaid over what you see, not just over the screenshot. Okay. I did notice a hand up, but it's gone down. So do I assume we answered your question? Oh, no.
There it is again. Hi there, this is Elena in the state of Missouri. So
You're very quiet. Sorry, can you
hear me better?
Yes, I can.
All right. Thanks for taking my question. This is Elena in the state of Missouri. So are you saying that Teams has been revamped and that there is also Teams Premium? So we're talking two different things here.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, so meeting options you can access from your meeting invite. And this is in response to a question in the chat. You can access your meeting options from the link in the meeting invite. Okay, it does say meeting options in there. You can also access it from Outlook. If you set your meetings up in Outlook, there is a meeting options button on the toolbar at the top. In Teams in the calendar, when you go and open a meeting appointment from the Teams calendar, there is a link to meeting options in the tools at the top. And when you're in a meeting, you can also access it through the three dots. Only the meeting organizer can access the meeting options. So you won't see it in this meeting because you didn't organize it. Okay. The meeting settings are usually best configured before the meeting starts, but some of them you can change during the meeting. So you can't change a sensitivity label if you've got the Teams Premium license during a meeting. That stops and restarts the meeting because it changes the configuration. You can't change the end-to-end encryption setting. but you can choose to enable and disable cameras, stop recordings, block the chat, those sorts of things. Okay, so the majority you can change during a meeting, but it is best to set them beforehand. And one of the features that I was talking about, if I just go back a couple of slides, I talked about meeting protection, and I mentioned that you can create templates for meetings. That sets all of the options. So you go to your calendar, and on your in Teams, you can only access these templates from Teams. But if your admin has set them up, when you go to the new meeting button, you have a little drop down, you can pick the templates from there. By default, we have meeting, live events and webinars. With Teams Premium, we can set up other templated meeting types for the types of meetings we have in our organisation with the settings we want for those types of meetings. Okay. So the information protection, governance and compliance improvements. I just want to point out to you all of the standard Microsoft 365 protections, I call them the safety nets, are all still applicable to Teams, whether you're looking at the new version of Teams, new Teams as Microsoft is calling it, the current version of Teams, classic Teams, and whether you've got the add-on of Teams Premium or not. So we can still govern how long we keep data for, such as chats. We can govern recordings with retention labels and policies as well. We can still configure data loss prevention policies to control what information people can share in Teams chats. Records labels don't really apply to Teams in total because we can't label a chat message. We can label files, but not messages in Teams. Okay, so if you've got a file stored in Teams, you can use the records functionality as well as the retention functionality. But you can't label a chat message. eDiscovery is a tool that we can use for searching information to find out and discover the information about a topic, a bit like we used to do searching through an old-fashioned library or archive, manually working our way through. We don't need to manually work our way through all that digital data. eDiscovery can do it for us. And then sensitivity labels are our encryption labels. And again, we can't apply them to chat messages, but we can apply them to files and encrypt the file and limit what our users can do with those files. You can also apply a sensitivity label to a team, and we can use that to prevent external people being added to that team, for example. You can also use it to control what options appear on the share box when people are sharing files that are stored in a particular team. So you can customize the behavior of teams with sensitivity labels to a certain extent, not everything. But it's not just those safety nets that we need to look at when we're talking about governing teams. You need to think about decision points. What your team's going to be called. Are we going to classify them with the sensitivity labels? Are we going to allow guests? How are we going to deal with end of life for teams as well? Who can add users to a team? Who can't add users to a team? Which features in Microsoft Teams do we not want our users using? You know, translation goes through a service that sits outside of Microsoft 365. So it's not governed by the same compliance controls. The data isn't held in the same location. So do you want your users to be able to use the translation functionality? Questions like that are things that we need to address as we're deciding how we're going to govern our team's environment. And I would simply say new teams basically allows you to revisit all of those points. There are no real new features as such in the re-engineered teams yet. Okay, placeholder word. There will be, but there are no new compliance features as yet in the re-engineered version of Teams. So this is a time to review our decision points. There's one thing it does help with, and that is if you're invited to a meeting in an organization where you have a guest user account, it will automatically switch you to that tenant. So you don't have to remember. I've been invited to a meeting in Microsoft tenant, so I've got to switch to the Microsoft tenant before I go and get the link to join the meeting. So believe me, the number of times I've ended up in the wrong tenant and I can't participate in the meeting properly. New Teams fixes that, which means any chat messages, any interaction I do, those are stored in the Microsoft tenant. They're stored in the right tenant, rather than Microsoft having no control over it because it's stored in our tenant. Yeah. So that improves security. But the big reason new Teams is important today for implementing governance and compliance is it's an opportunity to educate your users. And yes, I have deliberately chosen a picture of a gentleman in a wheelchair because it's not something you expect to see generally on a slide. And the idea is we should expect to see it, just like we should expect governance features, we should expect guidance on how we're going to work. So this is our opportunity to open the eyes of our users so that they are more aware of what they're doing. Once you've made your decisions and configured your features. Teams Premium's a slightly different situation in that Teams Premium does offer security, compliance, and governance enhancements. We've got mainly around those meeting protection features that we can lock down, as I've been discussing, the watermarking, the encryption of meeting traffic, so we can make sure that our meeting traffic isn't intercepted and therefore people can't listen in on our meetings. We can use sensitivity labels to lock down the features of the meeting so they can't be changed mid-meeting. And we can use meeting templates to make it easier for our users to set those right options. Several of you asked about working with meeting options. They've been in Teams since the very beginning. And very few users are aware of meeting options. So they don't know that they can use them, and therefore they're creating and setting up meetings which don't have the right controls on them. So that's a really useful feature. I wish meeting templates had come into the core license. Unfortunately, they're only going to be available to users licensed for Teams Premium. Yeah. So that is a downside. But if you think about all of your users in your organization, the vast majority of them are not the people setting up the very sensitive meetings. They're not the ones setting up most of your customer contact and partner contact meetings. It's only those users who are setting up those meetings that need the licenses to make sure we've got those correct settings in place. Okay. And if you occasionally need a meeting with those options, you can always get somebody else to set it up for you and invite you to the meeting as a co-organizer, and therefore benefit from those if it's just the ad hoc 1 or 2 a year that you need. You don't pay in the UK £10 per month for a whole year to set up 2 sensitive meetings in a year. That's something we're not going to do. Yeah, it's something we're going to work with a centralized creation person to set up that meeting for us for the ad hoc ones. I'm just going to go back and look at our poll and see where we've got to. So the information retention is still the most concerning feature when it comes to governing Microsoft Teams. And that's where we're going to use the information lifecycle management features, which we cover in the records management and also in the information governance, Teams information governance courses. And typically you set that up with a policy that says files or chats, this is how long we're going to keep it for. So that's a fairly easy one to follow. And then we've also got the uncontrolled creation of teams. That's something that we can control. It does require an Azure AD Premium 1 license. So if you've got a basic Office 365 plan, it's not included in that, but you can limit who can create teams fairly simply with that. My meeting security, we've got some steps that we can take with that without any of the premium features, simply by training our users about the meeting options. And then there's obviously the enhanced functionality of Teams Premium around that. And working with external people and organizations, most of the controls are in the standard feature. The new Teams introduces a bit more control over that because it makes sure people are in the right tenant when they're working. So that's included. New Teams is included. Meeting security is included. Uncontrolled creation, information retention, none of those require Teams Premium. Enhanced meeting security, we have the option of with Teams Premium. Okay. And then causing us issues, capturing meeting notes and actions, that is Teams Premium. Okay, if you record your meeting, Teams Premium can capture the actions for you automatically. Meeting options is a user training exercise, but we can use Teams Premium to set up templates. Teams performance is going to be improved for everyone with new Teams as that rolls out. So is tenant switching. Webinar signups is much improved, but if you do a lot of it, I would suggest you look at the Teams Premium. And there's some big improvements coming in live events that I can't tell you anything about, but there are some big improvements coming. And I was just going to say any questions, but I've noticed we've got one. So I'm going to answer that one first, and then we'll see if there's any more. Okay, can you move the file? So can you remove the file tab or point it to another SharePoint site? Okay, so you can't remove the file tab. You can't point the file tab to a different SharePoint site. But what I tend to encourage people to do is add in Teams on the Files tab, you've got an Add Cloud Storage option, and you can bring in your existing SharePoint sites into there and access them through the Files tab by using that. Okay, it doesn't change where files go by default. So if people attach a file to a chat, it goes into the default folder in Teams, but we can make it easier for people to move. The other thing to consider is most of your SharePoint sites are probably already team sites. So we can convert existing team sites into Microsoft Teams, and therefore we're not duplicating the number of teams. A team doesn't have to be a brand new SharePoint site in all cases. So there are options as to how you work with those to start with.
For those of you that have learned something today, if you would like to learn any more, then please look at our webinars. We have some more free webinars coming up. If any of you guys feel that you want to learn a little bit more about Microsoft Teams in relation to information governance and protection, then we do have a course. So please do register your interest. And for anybody that is looking for the future of Microsoft, Syntex is a big area now with AI coming into the world quite quickly, and if it's something that you want to kind of grab a hold of with Microsoft, then we do actually have a new Syntex course which links AI with SharePoint as well. It's a pleasure as always, and yeah, please do book onto some more webinars, more courses, and contact us for anything else that you may need.